The original is now located at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. It's a canard biplane with one 28 horsepower Wright vertical 4 engine driving two pusher propellers via a sprocket and chain transmission system. No wheels, natural fabric finish of muslin, no sealant or paint of any kind. The wing spans 36 feet 8 inches. The length is 29 feet 2 inches. It's 8 feet 2 inches tall, and it weighs in at 735 pounds. The 1909 Wright military flyer is the world's first military airplane. In 1908, the U.S. Signal Corps advertised for bids for a 2-seat observation aircraft. The general requirements were as follows: that it be designed to be easily assembled and disassembled so that an Army wagon could transport it, that it would be able to carry 2 people with a combined weight of 350 pounds and sufficient fuel for a 120-mile flight, that it be able to reach a speed of at least 40 miles an hour in still air. This speed performance would be calculated during a 2-lap test flight over a 5-mile course, with and against the wind. It must demonstrate the ability to remain in the air for at least 1 hour without landing, and then land without causing any damage that would prevent it from immediately starting another flight. It should be able to ascend in any sort of country in which the Signal Corps might need it in field service, and be able to land without requiring a specially prepared spot. Be able to land safely in case of an accident with the propelling machinery, and be simple enough to permit someone to become proficient in its operation within a reasonable amount of time. The purchase price was set at $25,000, with 10% added for each full mile per hour of speed over the required 40 miles per hour, and 10% deducted for each full mile per hour under 40 miles an hour. The Wright brothers constructed a 2-place wire-braced biplane with a 28 horsepower Wright vertical 4-cylinder engine driving 2 wooden propellers, similar to the aircraft Wilbur had been demonstrating in Europe in 1908. This airplane made its first flight at Fort Myer, Virginia on September 3, 1908. Several days of very successful and increasingly ambitious flights followed. Orville set new duration records day after day, including a 70-minute flight on September 11th. He also made 2 flights with a passenger. On September 17th, however, a tragedy occurred. At 5:14 p.m., Orville took off with Lieutenant Thomas O. Selfridge, the Army's observer, as his passenger. The airplane had circled the field 4.5 times when a propeller blade split. The aircraft, then at 150 feet, safely glided to 75 feet when it then plunged to the earth. Orville was severely injured, including a broken hip, but Lieutenant Selfridge was killed and the aircraft was destroyed. Selfridge was the first person to die in a powered airplane accident. On June 3, 1909, the Wrights returned to Fort Myer with a new machine to complete the trials begun in 1908. Wilbur had been flying in Europe the previous year and had thus been absent at Fort Myer in 1908. The engine was the same as in the earlier aircraft, but the 1909 model had a smaller wing area and modifications to the rudder and wire bracing. Lieutenant Frank P. Lamb and Lieutenant Benjamin D. Floys, future Army pilots, were the Wrights' passengers. On July 27th, with Lamb, Orville made a record flight of 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 40 seconds, covering approximately 40 miles. This satisfied the Army's endurance and passenger carrying requirements. To establish the speed of the airplane, a course was set up from Fort Myer to Shooter's Hill in Alexandria, Virginia, a distance of 5 miles. After waiting several days for optimum wind conditions, Orville and Floys made the 10-mile round trip on July 30th. The out lap speed was 37.7 miles per hour and the return lap was 47.4 miles per hour, giving an average speed of 42.5 miles per hour. For the 2 miles an hour over the required 40, the Wrights earned an additional $5,000, making the final sales price of the airplane $30,000. The aircraft was restored close to its 1909 configuration, but a few non-original braces added for the wheeled landing gear in 1910 remain on the airplane when it was turned over to the Smithsonian. Apart from a few minor repairs over the years, the airplane has not been restored since its acquisition in 1911. Of the 3 Wright airplanes in the NASM collection, the 1909 military flyer retains the largest percentage of its original materials and components.
It is August 29th, 2009, and that is a 1909 Wright military flyer. The first Army pilots learned to fly, and its ancestor at this location about 100 years ago. There's Dave Clemmer, a distinguished Army aviator.
When the pilot's ready to take off, he pulls the trigger, and 3 seconds and 60 feet later, he's in the air. This system never failed, the Wright brothers, in all the times that they used it. When Wilbur Wright was here in 1909, he did do an experiment where he laid out an extra long track and did not use the tower and the catapult, and it worked perfectly well. But this allowed them to be able to take off in very small space.
And Greg Cohn's hiding himself only behind his engine.
This is a completely airworthy, flyable aircraft. It has not flown yet, and that's why we're not trying to do that today. What's in the museum right now is a static, non-airworthy reproduction of the Model B, which was the airplane that was created after this. This certainly does have a real engine. The 1908 flyer, after it crashed, the only thing that survived the crash was the engine, and the Wright brothers used it on the 1909 machine. The original 1909 machine itself was decommissioned by the Army in 1911 and put in the Smithsonian. It remains there to this day.
That's the elusive Greg Cohn there, hiding his face from us, but working on the bottom of the airplane.
In 2006, Ken and his team were allowed to go up into the airplane. It's suspended from the ceiling of the Air and Space Museum, and open the engine.
On the rail and bridle, as it was during launches 100 years ago.
Oh, they loved each other.
This is just a unique sound. It's the first time you're going to hear this, or anybody's heard this in 100 years.
There's the air boss, Ken Hyde. A lot of confidence today. I'm going to start. Ah, the breeze feels good. That's a tribute to Ken and his great team, and especially my good friend Greg Cohn, who built that engine. Exactly like the Wrights built theirs.
Jeff is here.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. My name is C.H. Lottie. You didn't know that, did you? October 27th, it seems a little warm for that for October, but
Hey,
another
Jeff, I'm
milestone in the history of flight has been reached. There's one now.
Okay.
We have been following the Wright brothers
Yes, I'm
and their remarkable aeronautical feats for some time now in our papers. But it's really since the summer of 1908
Okay.
at Fort Myer, Virginia, and in Europe that the full impact of this invention has begun to manifest itself.
Let's take a look at the magneto. And the radiator. And piping. And of course the fuel tank. You notice that the top part of the front canard, Orville still didn't like the stability when he moved this airplane over here. So he took the top off and he moved it aft, and you can see it through the wires and stuff back there. Very thin piece of canard between the empennage and the back of the main planes.
Well, every indication you could go 100 hours.
I noticed a look of shock on your face when it started on the first pull.
Nicely put. I was actually getting electrocuted.
Unfortunately, I didn't record it for posterity. But you pretty well got this thing down now, don't you?
Yeah, but see, I learned something every time. This time when it started, I learned not to wear a short sleeve shirt. Because when you're adjusting the spark advance, you're leaning your arm against the contact switch, so you're getting voltage from your elbow down to your hand. So yeah, I did look shocked.
Congratulations again.
It worked again.
You do it good.